Hey, friend, and welcome to the Trend Report. I'm Sid Meadows, and I'm a business leader, coach, and consultant, and a longtime student of the office furniture industry. And in this podcast, we have powerful conversations with industry leaders, innovators, and others that are making an impact in their business and our industry. My goal is simple: to provide you with valuable insights, information, resources, and tools to help you grow, your business grow, and to help move our industry forward. So let's dive into today's conversation. I'm really excited to welcome, I'm just going to say it, the man, the myth, and the legend to the Trend Report, the one and only, I feel like I need a drum roll, Doug Shapiro, the Vice President of Sales for JSI. Hey, Doug, how are you?
Thank you, Sid. It is a real honor to be here with you. Followed you and your career, and you said, man, myth, the legend. You took my line. That's what I was going to use on you.
Yeah, myth is probably for me. But so the people listening need to understand this is like the third or fourth time that we have tried to do this. Life has happened. Things happened. Last time it was the internet. And just for a funny, as we're starting this one, the internet goes out on my computer for like 2 minutes. So Doug and I were having a really good laugh about, are we meant to actually record this?
Yeah, the good thing is when you're dealing with another podcaster, there's a lot of forgiveness, a lot of grace that's given because to do what you do, Sid, is not easy.
Well, I really do enjoy it. I never thought, the listeners have heard me say this before, but it's been something that was on my list to do for a really long time. And then in 2020, I'm like, well, what the heck are you waiting for now? Right. So I went out and did it, and I had no real concept of that it would take a life of its own. This is season 6. You are episode 151, I think. I should know that.
Wow.
Like, it just took a life of its own, but it's a lot of fun. I get to talk to amazing people like you. To meet a lot of people, and I get to share, hopefully, insights that help people. Like I tell people all the time, if I make you just a little bit mad, that's actually good. That means I'm challenging you to think differently about something.
I like that.
Enough about me. Let's talk about you, because lots of stuff going on with you, but I want to talk first before we talk about what it is you do today. I want to talk a little bit about Doug. Like, I want to get behind the scenes with Doug. So how did you get into the furniture industry? Because you've been, 20 something years? I'm guessing?
Yeah, 20 to 21 years, right at that mark. And it was, for me, it was about meeting people. And I met the owner of OFS when I started my career. He was on the board of trustees at a school that I went to in college. Mm-hmm. We kind of crossed paths. We briefly stayed in touch, and then I saw him later on in Barcelona, believe it or not, a separate occasion. And we ended up having this big lunch together. And I thought, wow, this seems like a really interesting industry. Seems like a cool company. So what kept me in the industry, though, was as I started to go out and meet people that have been doing this a long time, especially in the office furniture world. I was meeting people that were 35, 40 years into their career, and they were full of enthusiasm. They woke up hungry, excited, they were healthy, and they were wealthy too. And I was thinking, this isn't the typical image coming out of college that I have for someone who's at the end of their career. You expect them to be, tired and ready to, just ready to hang it up. And that was not at all the case. And that to me was sort of that light bulb moment, like, hey, this could be really good, and I need to stick with this.
So what was like the first thing you did? What was your first role in the industry? I always think this is very interesting, how we got our start in the industry.
Yeah. Outside of being a trainee.
Do you remember? It was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
do you remember?
I was on the product development side for the very early part of my career. That was probably the earliest chunk. And I stayed there for a while. I did things from supply chain to product development and design work, and working with product designers as sort of a liaison to our engineers. And that was it. A lot of it was just project management and hustle and learning.
What was your degree in college in?
Economics. Totally unrelated.
Okay. Economics, office furniture. Mine was in business communications, or actually it was technically called business communications, but it was really math communications, which is interesting because mass communications, when I went, It's not what I thought it was, but it was radio, television,
Ah,
media, marketing. And I mean, I got at school and started selling office furniture for a school supply company, but now I'm a podcaster behind the mic. So it's a little bit like full circle here. My degree's in mass communication, which is radio, television. And now here I am in the newest form of mass communication.
that's
Right.
really cool.
So, Doug, when you think back about your journey in the industry, like what's been the best part of working in the industry? And what have you like loved the most?
Oh, wow. There's a part that's sort of, I think, natural to me, which is, I love people and I could be doing a lot of different things. And as long as I had an opportunity to meet new people, kind of like when you described what it's like to be a podcaster, it's so much of it is a selfish endeavor to learn and grow and meet others. So that I could find anywhere. But what is specific to this industry, I think, is the level of creativity that I'm attracted to, where I really love the creative thinking, the imagination that goes into creating space, place, and products. The imagination that, you can build these tangible things that, some people grow to love. And then you meet others and they're like, oh, that's my favorite XY. That's my favorite chair, or I love my office. Or, even the way something is specified, someone might love that. And sort of the opportunity to create those kinds of moments, that's really cool.
Right. So you come in project management, make your way into product design, working with designers and, helping inform decisions about what is being put out by a company. And now you come to the dark side.
Yeah.
Let's be it's the dark side. Everybody wants to hate on salespeople, but welcome to the dark side, Mr. VP of Sales. So how do you feel about being, I'm joking a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But how do you feel about being on the dark side?
I thought I left the dark side. I didn't know that sales was the dark side. No, I'm kidding. I love what I do. And if I had to answer, why maybe sales is kind of has that connotation or association with the dark side, I think it's really sort of the old idea of just pushing something, or convincing or influencing. And I think that both sales and marketing have sort of evolved so much to where there's a new way of acting. And I think there's also this idea where sales is, it's not just so one-dimensional anymore. It's really about deep understanding before anything else. And I started kind of understanding the role of questions and how important questions are. And it's a kind of a two-way street. So like in sales, it's not just the importance of the questions I'm asking, but it's also what are the questions that the client's asking? Because I actually think the questions that others ask you give you more insight into what they care about than anything. And so like really paying close attention to your questions and the questions you're getting asked. And then when you start to do that, you can start to uncover ways that you can help. And then the other thing is also when you realize that the world is just so darn big and you're not so possessive of everything, you let go a little bit and you realize, hey, if you really believe in something and you have great products, you don't have to be the solution for everything, and that takes some of the pressure off of, what people think of when they think of sales.
Yeah, it is interesting to see and think about how the world of sales has evolved over the years, right? And you brought up something that I think is still a skill that people need to work on. And there's two skills there. It's the art of asking questions and asking open-ended questions and not yes and no questions, right? You want to ask an open-ended question. You don't want to ask how many chairs do you want to buy? I want to buy 20, right? You don't want to ask that question. You get a yes or no or a simple one-word answer, right? You want to ask a question along the lines of, well, what's going on in your business that is requiring you to purchase new seating? Like what's happening in your business? Completely different question. You're going to get to a lot more information from that one. So that's really important. But the part that I think is the more important skill set, Doug, that people are not focused on truly learning is listening.
I agree.
And listening with all of, it's called intuitive listening, right? Or active listening, where you listen with all of your senses, your eyes, your ears, your smells. I mean, you're watching body language, right? And in order to do that, what do we have to be? We have to be present in the moment. In order to be present, that means this little gadget, this phone that I'm holding in my hand, for those of you watching on YouTube, I held up my phone, has to be turned off or flipped over and on silent on the other side, because it's a huge distraction. And the minute it distracts you, then you lose what you lose your focus, you lose your presence, and now you're not listening anymore.
I agree. I think listening is so important. It's about hearing what they're not saying. Everyone is selling. Even if you're not selling a thing, you have ideas and you're trying to gain understanding of, and acceptance. There was a woman I interviewed. Her name was Hillary Green, and she was the head of workplace change for Scotiabank, and they were going through major changes where they were reducing the number of private offices. It's the changes that so many companies go through.
Sure.
She was explaining the change to an associate, and she was saying, well, you're going to get all these extra amenities now, and there's additional flexibility, and there's all these positive things. Like, why is it that you're still so upset about losing this private office? And he was like, because my parents will never get to see me in here. And this is like, like a 30-year-old man. And you hear that and you're like, wow, that really, you start to understand like all these emotions or feelings that maybe you overlook unless you actually dig a little deeper and you really try to understand. And so that's all part of what sales is too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And understanding what those needs are and how to help really solve that need for the customers. So I ask you, what do you love most about your job? What's the most challenging part about it?
Oh, time. It's time. It's without question. There's just so much you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people I want to see and so many places I want to visit, and what happens, Sid, you build up friendships over time, and they're all so important, and you just wish you had time to see everyone, and time to do all the things you want to do. So prioritization is sort of like the thing you're forced to do. And so that's
hard.
That's it. Yeah. If only I didn't have to sleep, it'd be great.
Oh my goodness. Doug, do you have children?
I do. I have.
How many?
I have 3. I have a 16, one that is 13, and then one that turns 12 here this month.
Oh, so you're about to have a house full of teenagers, or almost a house full of teenagers.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's already basically that way.
I'll say a prayer for you.
Yeah.
Boys, girls, all boys?
I have 2 girls, and the youngest is a boy. And
thank goodness for that.
Yeah, they're wonderful. Like, they are not, they're not great. Difficult. They're just fantastic. And I'm lucky in that way. I've heard the stories.
Enjoy them while they're there, because one day they're not going to be here and you're really going to miss them. And I joke about mine, and they're amazing. They're both off at school, one about to go to graduate school. And so, yeah, you miss them. The house, that was the worst part for me, was how quiet the house was.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
No door slamming or people coming in I could have set my watch at 3:00. I would hear a door slam, right? And banging around, when that's not there anymore, it's really weird. Like, oh, it's quiet.
It would be weird. My wife and I have a great friendship. So, there's things we did before the kids that we haven't done in a while, and just in terms of like we used to go travel places sort of on a whim. And all that just came to a screeching halt. And so, there's things to look forward to also with her.
Yeah, 100%. Now you're doing all this travel, so you're racking up all these points and all these miles. So like family travel can, you can go stay at really great places, fly for free. I mean, there's some perks to being a road warrior. How are you enjoying being out there and in the field and seeing and meeting people and learning? You got to be learning a lot about what's happening in the market today.
Oh, that's my objective, is to inspire others around what I'm so passionate about, and then also to learn, really. And that's it. I'm not out quote unquote selling as much as I am trying to build knowledge and then just share enthusiasm. There was an old expression, sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. And
I've not heard that.
I love it. And it's so true because, in our industry, because I know there's a lot of salespeople listening to you, Sid, and in our industry, a lot of times you're not talking directly to the decision maker, but you're talking to someone who then has to pitch your idea, or you're talking to someone who has to talk to someone who is going to pitch their idea, So you really have to be able to help people see all the reasons that you love what you do. And so that's
I think authentic enthusiasm is really what's important about that, because the fake enthusiasm, people can see through it. If you're really excited about a product and you really love a product or the space you're creating, whatever, it actually really comes through naturally rather than, faking it, because I think that's when you really start to lose people. It's just my opinion about that. But
I agree, Sid. If I could even share a little bit about, when I look back at the 200 some interviews that I had done in my previous podcast, when I look at who were the most captivating interviews, it all came down to audible passion. And it was sort of this aha moment of when people prepare for an interview or prepare for a presentation, let's say if you're a salesperson, you could spend all your time focusing on the content when really the most important thing you could do is just be in a good mood and fall in love with your work and fall in love with your purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, well, then start there. Understand your purpose. And when you do that, you really speak from the heart, and it changes everything. It changes the way you communicate. It changes your sense of confidence. And so that is the number one factor, I think, in giving a great interview is, do you care about what you're saying?
Yeah. Is it important to you? Right. So I have a podcast editor, producer friend who was sharing a story recently about how he got a new client. They had sent him a trailer for their episode to listen to and ask for feedback. It was a impromptu, recorded on their phone, not a professionally done trailer, but just kind of get the feel for it. And they asked for a feedback, and his feedback was, you need to smile while you're talking, because you can Google the benefits of smiling, and there's like 15 benefits of smiling. One of them is exactly what you said, is it puts you in a good mood. Yeah. Right. It helps you be in a good mood. And so it's also like stress reduction and all these other things. And that was his only feedback. Just smile, record it again, but next time smile. And I think it kind of goes to that point of what you were talking about.
I love it. And I'm going to take the smile even a step further. I'm passionate about the subject. So there's even a little personal brand hack here that happens. So when you smile, not only does it affect you, but the instant reaction, it's human nature. When you see someone smile back. Right? Most of the time when that happens, the other person doesn't even know they're smiling. But it's that instinctual that when you see someone smile, you smile back. So there was this all hands call that we would have, and there was a young woman who would get on and share case studies. And this was like kind of during COVID time. And there was all these screens lit up, all these videos. She'd get called on to present her case study. The first thing she'd do is she would smile really big, and she would say, like, hi, everyone. And I would watch the rest of the screen, and everybody's ding, 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 ding. Everyone was lighting up, smiling. And then all of a sudden people are saying, hey, that one girl who does the case studies, can she talk a little more? Can she get, how do we get her more into the call? That's a great hack. And so to not use that is a miss.
Well, I think people miss out on the understanding of the fact that your energy that you put out into the world at the moment that you're doing it is contagious. It's contagious. If you have positive, upbeat energy because you're smiling, doing things, you're feeling good, that's going to resonate. People are going to see that and they're going to emulate that. But just like the negative, I mean, you do it and you're negative and you're all being down and whatever, and the world hates me, and that negative energy is coming out. You're going to project that on others, and guess what? They're going to start acting like that.
Totally.
A long time ago when I was doing my coaching certification, I learned about energy and energy leadership. We're not going to talk about all that because we got to move on to office furniture. And so what it was about was how as human beings, the reframing that is so important because we get to choose how we show up. We get to choose how we show up. And people, I don't think people really understand that, but you get to choose. Like if I were having a really bad day before this podcast episode, I would have gone outside. I would have walked with the dogs. I would have cleared my head. I always give myself 15 minutes beforehand because that impacts the way I show up. And if you're same thing about going into a sales call or picking up the phone to call a customer to deliver bad news, right? You got to tell them the lead time's extended or whatever. The way you approach it with your energy and all that is going to impact how the customer receives it. So you gotta do that like reset. You know what I mean? That reset.
Totally. And that's all about that preparation, which is, like if you get lost spending all your time focusing on what you're going to say, you'd be better off spending your time on how you're going to say it.
That's right. And this is the last comment about that. If you know your stuff, you don't really have to worry too much about what you're going to say because you should know your stuff, right?
100%.
And you should be able to answer almost any question if you know your stuff. So Doug, you've been out in the wild traveling. What is if there was like one or two top learnings that you've heard from customers about today's workspace or what some of their challenges are, what sticks out to you of being the, couple of things that you're hearing from people while you're traveling?
Ooh, there's, here's one that I think has come up, but it's only come up when I've done some deep digging and I don't hear about it. I don't see writing about it, but it's interesting to me. And so I think others will find it interesting, which is I don't think we can assume that people know how to use a workplace. And so we hand over products and we hand over workplace design that have incredible thinking behind them, right? Deep thinking, but we don't always transfer, I think, the instructions. And I'll give an example. There is this vacuum mop kind of broom that I inherited. My parents were downsizing, moving into a senior living community, and they handed me this like Hoover vac that it looks like it's from outer space. Like it's just insane, this thing, right? And I'm too intimidated to even use it. And I know it would probably do a really good job cleaning my floors, but instead I just keep using, a regular basic mop. And I don't have the time to figure out how to use it. I don't have the energy. And I think a little bit of workplace is that way, where if you look at how much workplace has changed, there's so many new kinds of products. There's so many new ways of working that as product designers and as space designers, we've imagined and we've kind of put solutions forward, but that doesn't always make its way to the people that are using it. And so
a really great point.
That's one thing I think that we could all get better at. And, I even thought, like, is it as simple as, like giving more visual instruction to rooms? Like if we want people to have areas where they can be more creative, how can we show that this is your space to hack? You're empowered to move and use and create rather than letting things just kind of sit in one spot.
So I think there's also another caveat there that I think is really important, at least I think, is why is it created this way? Like not just what is it, how do you use it, right? How do you use this booth? How do you use this table? I mean, I would imagine unless you teach somebody, they don't understand that at a high adjustable table, at least for 10 to 20 minutes every hour, they need to stand up for 10 or 20 minutes, right?
Yes.
They just say, oh, this is really cool. I got this thing that goes up and down. But tell them why. Like, why do you have that? Because it's better for your health. It changes the way you breathe when you stand up. I mean, there's all these benefits. And like the creative space you talked about, why was this created? So is that incumbent upon us, or is that the building owner, or is it the interior designer, or is it a collective?
I think it's a collective. I think your point around why is super important. And I think we all need to get better at that. So as product representatives or makers, we have to be able to communicate our why better. And, that needs to find its way downstream. I think it makes total sense. And I think it's a miss in our industry. And it's not always a miss, but I think, it's something that we can just get better at.
Continuous improvement. Continuous improvement.
Yes.
And in the world today, there's a lot of conversations with people a lot smarter than me about the future of work and hybrid work and this kind of work. And I'm not going to say they're arguing, but I believe they're having spirited debates, which I appreciate.
Sure.
There's demanding, like JP Morgan Chase saying everybody has to come back to work by this time. And you have the federal government saying everybody, screw you, go home, and we don't want you here anymore. And the other people are embracing hybrid, and then some people. So it's all over the board. And as somebody that's been in the industry a really, really long time, what do you think the future of work is?
Wow. Well, I love that question. I love talking about it. I have a couple comments. One, I kind of feel like pre-pandemic, there really wasn't a lot of angst around the subject of presence. Yet, I think that people were present the majority of the time. But if you looked at vacancy rates or not vacancy rates, but if you looked at utilization, space utilization, we were probably in offices only utilizing 60% of workstations at a time. I mean, nobody was ever really at full space utilization every day anyway. So there was sort of a bit of hybrid flexibility and mobility that was sort of built in. And so I don't know that we need the sort of angst that we have right now or the extreme direction in one way or another. I think without question, presence is important, physical presence. I mean, I work remotely the majority of my time, but I do, because I travel a lot, I do go into an office at least a couple times a month. And it's super important for me. Like without that connection, I wish I had more of it, to be honest. I wish I had more of it. And, if I had that office in my backyard, I'd be using it a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's key. But I also think there's this thing about the future of work that I don't want to say I'm worried about, but there's this gap that I'm exploring, which is like, if you have technology and tools that are changing at this really fast rate, mm-hmm. which is happening since the launch of ChatGPT. It was happening before that, but this technology changes at this super exponential rate, yet culture changes in this sort of incremental pace. What's starting to form is a gap between what's possible and what we'll actually do. Mm-hmm. And that to me is like really interesting and has big ramifications on the future of work, because I feel like what will be possible in 5 years is going to be amazing. Culturally, what we'll adopt, it won't reach that. There'll be something that kind of gives us a punch or knocks us in a direction.
Sure.
But that gap is going to get bigger and bigger until something big happens and something changes and we get nudged up there. But I don't know, that's something interesting I'm trying to wrap my arms around.
Well, it's something now I'm going to pay attention to, because I think it's a really great point, and I'm going to pay attention to that to see what I can learn about that. Right. So when you think about, we as an industry, we need people in an office. That's what we do, right? Is we furnish offices. So we need people in the building. But there's a lot of benefit to hybrid models. There's a lot of benefit to, I talked about this before, work-life integration or work-life harmony, because work and life don't balance. And so in my opinion, there's no such thing as work-life balance. But I think that as an industry, we also need to try to come up with new tools and or new products that support customers and people working in multiple locations, not just in the office, but not just at home either. And it's going to be interesting to see if people focus on this and what they come up with. So do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are focused on that. I agree. As an industry, of course we want offices to flourish. I think they will. I think physical presence is paramount to creativity, to social growth and well-being. So I do think though that the office is sort of like a tool, and we should treat it more like a tool, which is like, hey, you're a carpenter, and the office is your saw. but you also have a hammer and a this and a that, and it's like they're all part of tools that you need to get your best work done. And
That's a great analogy, by the way.
thank you. And I really feel like once we start seeing it that way, just kind of collectively instead of a prescription or anything, we'll realize that, most of the time we do need a saw. Like we're gonna need that. But then there's other times where you go and you pick a different tool because it's what you need for the task at hand, and that's fine too. So I think things will level out. Obviously, digital presence is just going to be more and more important. So yeah, from a furniture solution standpoint, we're all wrapping our arms around that. Whether it's camera angles or there's a lot of factors at play there that are being explored.
Well, a minute ago you talked about this, but I'm curious as to your thoughts about AI in sales.
Yeah, sure.
Not just in our industry, but in sales. Like how should salespeople or should salespeople be using AI? And if they should, how should they be using it, in your opinion?
It's become so integral to my work. It's almost so fundamental that it's like, if you ask me to repeat the times I used AI, it would be like trying to remember when I drank water or took, it's like, I don't know. I just do it all the time.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's fundamental to anything, and more than probably writing and digestion of data. I use it for ideation, and I would encourage salespeople to lean into that piece of it, which is to have it help you think through things. So, whether it's understanding new ways to solve a problem, maybe that problem is spatial in nature. Well, AI has the capability of doing that now too. Even just basic ChatGPT models, where I could load a floor plan and ask about a specific area of the floor plan and say, I'm not sure if this product makes sense for that. What could we do to make, so you can explore concepts, you can explore ideas around, like what are the values of a company and how well do our values align with those of the one we're looking at. And I don't know that it is, to me, it's like an idea board.
So you mentioned something that I don't think a lot of people understand is you can actually have a conversation with it.
Oh, totally.
You could brainstorm with it.
Oh yeah. So
you can set it up and say, "Hey, let's do this," and it can even ask. You can like interview you and ask you questions and take that information in, and it's really amazing. So that was an example. Is there any other practical examples that you could give? And then I'd like for you to share, what tool are you using the most?
I'm using ChatGPT the most, and there's practical life examples, like even go outside of sales. Like you could just how you can interface with pictures really cleverly. But I have long drives, so for others who are in Texas, like you said, you have long drives, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I'll put on voice, and I'll have that conversation. I'll just talk about a problem I'm having. Maybe it's a problem thinking through an incentive program. And it's like, how can I think about this differently? And if I don't like the answers, I'm going to be like, I'm going to say, just get way more creative. Like, you're not, really challenge me here. It'll push deeper. And so I think generally, once you start to interact and you start to have some home run questions that come up, then you start to realize that, oh my gosh, like this is a mountain of opportunity. And I am only limited by the questions I'm asking. And then once that starts to sink in, you start to realize how important question asking is as a skill. And you say, well, if this is the future, if the future is less about answers, you having the answers, and it's more about, well, the answers all exist. Every answer you can imagine in the world exists. Now it just comes down to how good are the questions you're asking. And so it's like, if you have this, like this huge rock, and this rock is all the data. Every time you ask a question, it's like you have a chisel and you swing at that rock. Sometimes the chisel just bounces off, and it's made nothing. And other times you've made a a dent, and then you've created eventually over time a sculpture, which is like your final outcome. But it came through 30 and really imaginative questions. And so that's kind of like the mindset shift. And the other thing that is a big mindset shift, which is practical advice around AI, is that for those of us who grew up with Google, the key to Google was less is more. Like a few amount of very specific words would give you the best results. But as soon as you started filling it with, more and more, it's like it got, it's harder and harder to find what you're looking for. And it's the opposite in the AI world. It's just like more is more. Give it as much context as you can, fill it up, and ramble if you want, and you'll be rewarded for that.
I think it is important. So that's a great example, and you're right. Short was the way to go. But I also think it's really important that I point out that I did not grow up with Google like Doug grew up with Google. I grew up with the Encyclopedia Britannica, where you had to like make sure you had the right alphabet letter to look up what you wanted to look up. So I've come a long way. So I use two tools. I use ChatGPT a lot. I pay for it. And I use a tool called Perplexity AI. Have you used that?
I haven't, no.
So I use Perplexity as a research tool. So if I want to research something, like let's say I want to research the, I don't know, I make up a topic, right? I could go into Perplexity, ask it this question, and then it's going to take a few seconds. It's going to give me an answer. But what it's going to do is it's going to give me referenced research articles where it got that information from. And it gives you the number. It's like highlighted in the answer. And then you can click on it and it'll take you to the link where that information came from and exactly in the article where they got it from. So talk about deep dive researching. And I've talked about this before, like we should be researching. You should research your customer before you go call on your customer. You should research your designer. You should research your competitor, right? You should research to see it's smart. And tools like Perplexity will dive really deep. And then for me, I use ChatGPT to generate. So if I want to generate something, let's say I'm working on a business plan for something, I get research from Perplexity, then my thoughts, put it in a document, upload the document to ChatGPT and say, okay, let's generate together a business plan or an executive summary or whatever around this. So you can make them work for you. I think a lot of people are scared of it though.
Yeah, I think it's a combination, maybe being scared, and the other is just developing habits. It takes a while. It's a fundamental change in how you think. It's not even just how you work, but how you think. Where like you just used to focus so much on answers, and now you get to focus on questions. It's just a total flip.
So I have a book sitting up on my shelf over here. I haven't started reading it yet. It's by Warren Berger, and it's called A More Beautiful Question.
I love that.
And there is really an art to asking questions. I've fumbled a little bit today in asking you questions, but there is really an art to asking questions.
Sid, you're a pro. You're a pro, Sid.
And then the better you get at it. So I'm anxious to read that. There's 4 books before it. So we gotta wait a minute.
What did you say it was called again?
A More Beautiful Question by Warren Berger.
I love that. So there's a person I follow. His name is Joe Ferraro, and he has a podcast called 1% Better. And Joe is a master question asker. I actually had him on as a guest at one point because I felt like the importance of questions was critical to design. And he gave me examples of like how we can create more skillful questions. And one of them stuck with me. He said, imagine you're talking to a college football coach. And he said, I could ask that person, well, what are you about? Or I could say, if I followed you around every day, what's a word I'd hear you say over and over again? And it's like, oh man, like one question, they both tell you the same thing. But one gives the person who's answering a way to think differently and like give you a whole window into their life that if they just answered the question, well, what are you about? They would miss that window. So it's like that that to me was such a great example of how different questions can give you different windows.
But in essence, it's a similar or almost the same question, right?
It
Different.
is. It
Yeah,
is.
that's really
Just,
cool.
phrased so differently. So shout out to Joe.
So I'm going to go. Thank you for giving me another podcast to listen to.
There you go.
I have a lot of podcasts I listen to and a lot of books that I read. So you're feeding my problem. So thanks. I appreciate that. I want to talk for a minute about A&D. You've spent a lot of time in that world with working with A&D, doing research there. You know a lot of people. They are one of the most difficult influencers in our entire process to get in front of. And I asked this question a lot of people, and I recently asked it of Cheryl Durst, who I hope will come on the show later this year to answer the question. But as a furniture seller, how do we get in front of them today when you're told by some of the biggest ones, well, you got once a year you can come, and you can't come by yourself. You have to come with 3 other people, and you only got 45 minutes, which means you basically get 15 minutes each. And some people are going to be there and some people are going to be on the screen. How do we support that community and share our stories, share our brands, share our products with them when there appears to be this iron curtain around them?
Sure. I'll give you some of what I would use. Number one, I think, is just be brief, be brilliant. Like, you don't have to use all your dynamite on the first one. I've always felt like it's okay to leave people wanting more. So when it's going really good, that's usually when I stop. Okay.
You leave them hanging.
Yeah. And I think that's okay because, you'll see these people again at some point in time, So be brief, be brilliant. I would say a second one is don't show up empty-handed. And I don't mean that by bringing gifts or food or something, but it means like, I am going to bring them something that they can use in their personal life. And it's going to be some form of an advice, research that I've done. So an example is I share some of my tips on powerful communication, tips I've learned from podcasting, right? Stuff you already know, Sid. And I'll bring some of those and hand those over. Or, my daughter.
So you put them on a card or something?
Yeah.
Like you put them on a card? Okay.
Yeah, and I'll explain what they are.
Yeah.
Because I care about them. I care about their career and their personal life. And I'm so happy to be a resource and to help. And I think that transfer of authentic enthusiasm and authentic care of, wanting to help is more important than anything you can share about a product. And then of course, if you do share, product and brand related things, it can't be boring. Everybody's time is so precious and there's so many ways to be entertained. Boredom is just inexcusable. So you gotta, if you can do all 3 of those things, if you can entertain, and I bring humor into this too,
Yeah, perhaps they crack a joke, right?
Yes.
Something.
Yes.
Yeah. I've heard people in the podcast community talk about how important it is, depending on what you're doing, to actually take an improv class as a podcaster,
Ooh,
right?
like
Depending
that.
on what your content is. If you want to be a speaker, like a keynote speaker, taking an improv class is really good because you learn a little bit of that. And it is a gift to learn how to read body language.
Oh yeah.
And lean into it. And like, I will stop and I can say, Doug, I see that there's an expression on your face that you disagree with me. Would you mind sharing with me why you disagree with me? Like, it's
That's
a gift to be
powerful.
able to, yeah, but it also makes sure people are awake.
Sid,
Like,
Sid. But you know what? That's actually, that's a great observation because when you ask people, like, what's one superpower that you could have? I bet 1 out of every 5 people is going to say, I wish I could read minds. And you know what? You can't. But you got to watch
by reading their body language,
right? And
by being present.
That's so true. That's super interesting. So in a way, gosh, you have a superpower.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm a god. Yes, Doug, I have a superpower. So the next time you're in front of a group, you're going to think about this. You're going to be like, oh, I can see that this person's body language is not really good. How do I lean into asking about it? Because they start to drift away, right? You want to bring them into the conversation. So back to A&D, sorry. You said, be brief, be brilliant. I love that, especially the be brilliant part. Like, really think about that. Don't show up empty-handed. And you were specific about it's not food, it's not a gift. And your idea is, I'm going to assume it's a branded card that has points for better communication. I mean, it's so great because they're going to remember you gave that to them. It's likely going to sit on their desk or be in their top drawer. So that's really good. And then I think the most powerful thing you said was be a resource, not a salesperson. Be a resource and show you care about them and their pain. You've only got 15 minutes, maybe you only got 30 minutes, but show that you are a valuable resource and listen. So those were good, Doug.
Thank you. There's a one little phrase that I think captures it, which is people care less about what you have to say and more about how interested you are in them. And so when you can share and you have genuine interest in the person across from you, that is the ultimate connection.
It is. And you got to, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother podcast episode, Doug. So Doug, what would you say to new and young people in our industry? Because as you know, we have a challenge of bringing new and young people into our industry and attracting them to what you and I both know is an amazing industry to work in. What advice would you give to them?
Oh, well, in a way, I feel like I can relate, even though I'm 20 years in here, just having recently changed jobs. I feel like I kind of was I kind of was the person coming in again that, that doesn't know where to go and who to talk to. And I would say that tightrope of knowing when to just listen and knowing when to speak up is important, and to not try to be on one side or the other, but people want to hear what you have to say. And if you're at a place where they don't, that's probably not the right place.
Yeah, amen to that.
So, don't be afraid to speak up. And at the same time, listening as a skill is huge. It's just I think most people find themselves on the other side of it. You leave a place in the world where the only time you get to speak is when you're called on and you raise your hand. And now you're in a free-flowing sort of conversational environment. And so just speak up.
I love that. That's great advice. So we're coming to a time where we've got to wrap up this conversation, which I don't want to because I got a whole more. I got a lot of things I want to talk to you about. But first off, what can we expect to see from JSI in June this year at officially for you guys design days for others of us at Neocon? What can we expect to see from you guys?
Well, I'm not
going to see you.
You'll see me, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Good.
I'll be there, and you will have so many of the JSI people there. But the most important thing you can expect to see, well, I shouldn't say the most important, but one thing you can count on is this love what you do culture. It's kind of funny. That tagline was given to us by accident. It was a team out of Gensler, DC that was doing one of our showrooms. And this was, long before I was there. This was at least 5-6 years ago. And someone said in a call, you guys just love what you do. And then the CEO at the time just snagged it, hung on to it.
There it is.
And all of a sudden it's showing up on the walls. We got t-shirts and now, it's a huge part of our mantra and our culture, which is, this is it, this is our only trip around, the world. And, what's the point of all this if we don't love what we do? And so that is what we lean into.
Well, I'm excited about that. But I think what's interesting about that is it took somebody outside your industry, outside your business to share with you what the passion is inside your business. It just goes back to listen and add. You didn't even ask, but he or she shared with you. You guys just love what you do and it's stuck, right? So there's a lot of lessons in that too. So no product, you're not going to give us any pull back the cover on any products, any secrets or anything, Doug?
I'm not giving away those secrets, but yeah, I mean,
okay. We'll let you off the hook on that then. So Doug, I'm just going to speak for a vast part of our community. We've missed you. You started a new job and had to dig into the new job, traveling and totally understand and respect everything that you're doing. But we've missed you. So I have two questions. When are we going to start seeing you more content come from Doug Shapiro? That's my first question.
It's absolutely going to happen.
Okay.
And I'd love it to happen this spring.
It's hard, isn't it?
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I respect the hard. I really do. I know how hard it is.
Yeah. It's hard, but it's also, it's an important part of, my own sense of fulfillment. Like I love that. And I miss that too. So thanks for saying that, Sid.
Well, you have a really great personal brand in our industry. Now I'm going to tell a little story before I ask you the last question. So I see Mike Wagner post this post on LinkedIn, big announcement tomorrow, new VP coming aboard. And I read in the comments, winky face, who could that be? Or something like that. Or I wonder who that is. And I'm looking at that going, what's, I'm trying to read between the lines. And then I just forgot about it and didn't read between the lines. Oh, that's really weird, Doug, commenting like that. Like, who could that be? And then the next day it was you. Right. So, but we've missed your content. We'd love to see you back out there. I know I always enjoy consuming. I know there are a ton of other people that like to hear your voice. Oh, the whole point of that was you have a really strong personal brand, Doug.
Thank you.
People respect you. People respect your voice and your thoughts about things. So yeah, come back, man. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, you did it. You made a change and you stuck with it. And, so you set the bar there, and I'd love to do that.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Listen, I love this. I like to talk to people all day long, right? It's the getting here is the hard part. I love the end result of my articles when I write my articles, but they're inspired. So like I have to have a feeling about them to sit down and write them. And anyways, it's just, sometimes I stare at a blank page and like Rob's going to kill me if I don't get this article turned in on time kind of thing. So my last question, Doug, are we going to see you behind the mic again?
Oh yeah. You're the first person I'm telling, but yeah, I'm going to do that.
That's excellent.
I'm going to jump back into it. Details will be dripped out later.
Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Shapiro coming back to the podcasting world. You heard it here first on the Trend Report. Now, you're going to announce the podcast before this actually airs.
Yeah, I know.
So this may be late news.
It may be, but yeah, when I do get it going, Sid, it'd be fun to do another session with you.
It'd be great. Then you can ask me all the questions.
I know. I'm much more comfortable on that side of the microphone.
You did a great job, Doug. I cannot thank you enough for sticking with me till we got through all of the issues and cancellations to get here today and to record this. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your journey at JSI. I look forward to seeing you in person at Design Days officially for you guys, the first, whatever the week of 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever it is of June. And with that, Doug, if our community would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
I'm a LinkedIn guy. That's where to find me. Thanks for asking, Sid, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And just remember, guys, if you do reach out to Doug, if you're not already connected with him, be sure you let him know you heard him here on the Trend Report, and that's why you're reaching out. Thanks again, Doug, and everybody listening today. I appreciate you hanging in there with us. We went a little long today, but go out there and make today great, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.